Hello, and thank you for joining us for our first virtual NECR alumni panel. My name is Kirsten Pugh, and I am the Associate Director of Curriculum Development for the NECR program, as well as an alum of the program. Today's alumni panel will be hosted by Dominic Rinaldi. Dominic is the Senior Admissions Counselor at Columbia University's School of Professional Studies, as well as an alumni of the program, graduating in 2017. Since then, Dominic has focused the skills he learned in the program within higher education, specifically assisting those who are going through the graduate application process. And without further ado, I will let Dom take it away.
Thanks so much, Kirsten, and thank you so much to our fabulous panelists that have joined us here today. I'm joined with some amazing colleagues. So we have with us today Rebecca Chastain, who's a graduate from 2013 from the program. She's the Associate Director of Global Diversity Inclusion at Merck. And then we have Mariko Mori, graduate in 2016, and she's the Deputy Director and Cabinet Secretary in Japan. Great welcome to both of our panelists, and great thank you to Kirsten for starting us off. Rebecca and Mariko, how are you today?
Doing well, thank you. And thank you for having me.
I'm good too. Thank you for having me too.
Of course, of course. So just for our attendees, we'll go over just a little bit of a layout of our session today. So of course, I'll have some questions. I'll ask both of our panelists regarding just their alumni experience in the program, a little bit about what they've been doing, skills that they've gained, and how they're utilizing them today. And then throughout the session, we certainly encourage our attendees to ask questions via the Q&A box located on the bottom of their screen. Feel free to put some questions in there. We'll be answering questions throughout. I'll be ensuring to answer those questions and bring them up. We'll also have a dedicated opportunity at the end of this session to ask more specific questions to both of our panelists today. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and jump in and learn a little bit more about our attendees. So the first question I have is could either of you, and perhaps we'll start off with Mariko, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what made you apply to the program, and a little bit more about what you're doing right now as a freshman?
Okay, so again, my name is Mariko, and actually I'm calling in from Japan, Tokyo, Japan right now. And what made me apply to the program? So before the program, I was working at government also. And I wanted to have some negotiation skill, because at my work, maybe anytime, any work situation, you need to have a negotiation skill. And I wanted to have a theory and structural background with negotiation. So I searched some courses in US, and I found this program and I joined it. And after the program, I went back to the government, and now I am working at Cabinet Secretariat and as a Deputy Director, and especially I'm in charge of HR management. So how many people should work for the one ministry and another ministry. So human resource allocation and organizational development, that is my responsibility right now. And yeah, I use lots of negotiation and coordination skill in my workplace. Yeah, that's all for now.
Thank you, Mariko. And Rebecca, do you want to share a little bit about yourself as well?
Absolutely. So I actually am from Washington, D.C., grew up in Washington, D.C. in northern New Jersey area, but currently living in Philadelphia. What made me apply to the program initially was at the time I was working with Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a management consulting firm. And what I was doing with them was focusing on working with a client that was looking to increase the number of diverse students in the Homeland Security STEM fields. And that really sparked my career interest in diversity and inclusion work. And as I kind of learned more about D&I work and kind of expanded my skill set in that space, I did see a direct complement between diversity and inclusion work and the skills that I would gain in this particular program. So that is really what sparked my interest in applying for the program. The idea of learning skills to manage conflicts across cultural boundaries and how that connects to diversity and inclusion work really was kind of my starting point. And in my current role, so it's interesting, my current role is also within the human resources umbrella. And within that, of course, I'm with the Global Diversity and Inclusion COE. So I certainly agree with what was shared previously that having the skill set to negotiate is a daily skill set that I use in my current role.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rebecca. I guess on that same line, maybe both you and Mariko could elaborate a little bit more on some of the specific skills from the program that you feel that you're utilizing on your day-to-day work experience that relates to the program and to the work that you're doing.
Should I go first? Yeah, negotiation skill, and especially for especially the proving skill, the communication skill, maybe I should say, to know what the counterpart is wanting. So my work as a HR specialist, I need to allocate human resources between several ministries. So they are fighting for the limited resources. So I need to find a agreeable, mutual agreeable point between those ministries. So I applied the analysis skill, which I learned from the program, and I map out information, and I analyzed what each counterpart really wants, and the underlying constraint. So those kind of analysis and also probing communication skill, that is what I use daily, which I learned at the program, I think.
So I probably am overlapping in some of the responses, but I totally agree with what you've shared. Certainly that the communication piece and how to effectively communicate your perspective, I think, is incredibly valuable. One of the things that I think I do, one of the skills I think I've honed, and I do think it's one that I kind of bring to the table in my current role, is the ability to remain solution oriented. And I do think that many of the courses that are part of this program do focus on that there is a possible solution to conflicts. And I think bringing that solution-oriented approach is certainly something that I bring to the table in my current role. And I would say that is a broad skill set that's certainly transferable to a lot of roles. In addition to remaining solution-oriented, of course, there is that ability to problem solve. So if you are approaching a problem from the perspective that you can find a solution, then you are more likely to find a solution to that problem or to that challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mariko and Rebecca, for sharing a bit more about that. Maybe we should go a little bit, further back and talk a little bit more about your time before the program and where you were at professionally and what kind of, I guess, interests you specifically in continuing into the program to further your kind of professional outlook.
So before I applied the program, I was in charge of designing economic development policy. So that is especially for the local government economic policy program. That's what I was in charge for at the time. And at that time, I needed to coordinate with several private sectors and some local governments also. So, and I made not mistakes, but some negotiation didn't go well. And I wanted to know how to do the negotiation better. And especially, I think it's not only Japanese government, but at the government as a specialist, we go to like touchy-feely kind of just experience relied on negotiation style. It's not backed with theory or structure or understanding of the negotiation. So that's why I wanted to apply for this program, and especially it was really interesting to me, not only the negotiation perspective, but also the program title is conflict resolution also. So I think not only analyzing the negotiation or just studying the negotiation, but also how to learning conflict management. That is also that interested me at the time. Yeah, I looked at different programs, but it looked really, the Columbia NECR program was really interesting because it was focused on more, the daily skill, or more, not only theory, but also the role play and those kind of like the class where students can join. Those kind of teaching style was also really interesting to me.
So for me, prior to entering the program and just kind of learning about the program, one of the things that I will say, and I might be on my own in saying this, is I was attracted to the program. I saw the link to diversity and inclusion work in terms of being able to manage conflicts across cultural boundaries. But I will say, I don't know that I knew exactly what I was going to do with the skills that I gained when I first entered the program, or how I was going to apply them to my role previously with Booz Allen Hamilton. I will be totally honest about that. So with that in mind, I do think as I was going through the program, I did have to be intentional about how I was going to talk about the skills that I gained from the program. So I will maybe answer the question with what I did after I applied to the program and kind of understood fully what I was going to gain from the program. So I was more intentional because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to apply it. I did not think I was going to go into mediation. I knew that. I did not think I was going to go in the ombuds space. I knew those things. So what I did was kind of keep notes on what I thought from each class could apply to D&I work. Right, so looking at the program and the skills I was gaining through kind of this broader lens of D&I kind of kept a running list formally for a little while, and then kind of just keeping that perspective in mind. As I was taking classes and gaining skills, like how was I going to talk about this degree that I will have, and how I'm going to talk about it in a way that says that I have this skill set that will benefit your organization. So I think that answers it a little bit, but I don't know that I necessarily was one of those people that had the direct connection, just a broader connection when initially applying for the program. And some folks may be in that space as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that viewpoint. As Mariko had highlighted, the program really does have not just a specific focus on, just negotiation or just mediation. And I think between the three of us, we could agree that that's also something that's really a value of the program, is that you really do get a robust understanding of conflict resolution. So like you noted, Rebecca, it's very easy to come into the program with an interest and also focus on that, but also keep a little bit more of an open mind to other skills and other things you can utilize in the program to, make your professional outlook a little bit more robust as you graduate from the program. Mariko, I wanted to ask you a specific question based on what you shared. And you brought up a great point about negotiation and being in the States and then going back to Japan. Could you talk more specifically on what that was like with those specific skills and how they kind of transferred to a different location, I guess, so to speak?
So I think actually it was really surprising to me that those skill sets I learned at Columbia that can be applicable to the Japanese workplace setting. I'm kind of really surprised, and to be honest, I was really skeptical that I can apply those skills to the Japanese government work setting. I didn't expect that, but yeah, coming back to Japan, and I think it's really universal skill, and maybe the cultural setting is a little bit different, but the basic negotiation, let's say theory or the framework can be applicable to Japan too. So it's really kind of surprising to me. And I think it's not just like the nationality differences, but also the individual difference. The negotiation style is totally different within individuals, and running different types of negotiation style at NECR that can be applicable to Japanese people. So it's very interesting. And maybe I should say, maybe it's going back to the first question or the second question, but not only running negotiation theory, but also like knowing my own negotiation style or knowing my own decision-making style. That is like really aha moment to me, what I learned. Yeah, that's what to say at the NECR program. Before that, I didn't have that much opportunity to look at me, reflect my own negotiation style or my decision-making style. So it was really great experience to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Mariko.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, a specific question for you. You mentioned you came in with the program with a little bit more of a focus on D&I work. How did you, throughout the program, come to realize how to frame that going back into the work that you were doing? What kind of value did you see yourself having going back into D&I work?
Sure. So I want to also echo what was previously shared was, and I think this applies to, this answers your question, but one of the things I think, not just specific to D&I work, just kind of broadly re-entering the workspace after completing the program, was that self-awareness piece. And I think we probably would all agree that all day long we are managing conflicts and conducting negotiations. That is just kind of a part of life. So life is probably a series of conflicts that we're managing, some well, some not so well. So I would say that self-awareness piece, so the time spent in the courses where there was time spent focusing on learning your own triggers, learning how you manage and respond to conflict, and figuring out how to manage how you respond to conflict, I think is particularly important. And I would say the way that I articulated that when going back to work for the organization I was working with at the time was, again, the ability to stay solution-oriented. So while I understood that I was gaining these skills to help me manage conflicts, for me, how I translated that was the problem solving focus and also just staying solution oriented. So again, I think there is a way to translate even the skill set of self-awareness into language that helps an organization understand how you operate and what value you can bring.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So moving forward with just more of a general question, I guess, about what conflict resolution is. And Mariko, you alluded to this earlier on, that when you see the name, negotiation and conflict resolution, you think a little bit more about that. How would either of you classify what the field of conflict resolution is as it exists today?
That is really, yeah, interesting question. I think the conflict resolution these days, maybe not only US, but also in Japan, people's opinions are getting diverse, and it's really divided. Not only in US, but also in Japan. And people are having more different opinions, and it's really hard to find a common ground between people with different opinions. I think it's getting, I don't know why, but yeah, compared to, I graduated like 10 years ago from the undergrad. Compared to that time, now it's really hard to find a common ground. And this is exactly when we need conflict resolution skills. And yeah, I think not only like our workplace setting, but also our private personal affairs could be conflict resolution setting. And also international, I didn't study that much about international issues at NECR, but yeah, in the global setting, the conflict resolution skill and the topic itself is getting more attention, and we need to have more basic understanding, or everybody need to have some kind of skill sets to do well in those conflicts, I think. Yeah, I'm answering your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rebecca, anything to add?
Sure. So I wouldn't describe myself as being kind of formally in the field of conflict resolution. But I do think that, so I probably couldn't speak to what is specifically happening for someone that is a conflict resolution practitioner, right? So, but I will say that I generally define conflict resolution as how you effectively manage and engage disputes or challenges. And I describe it that way, kind of a very simple definition of what conflict resolution is, but I would say that is how I am using it throughout my day at work, right? So how am I effectively managing conflicts between myself and a coworker, or between other coworkers? So that's how I would sort of define it. And again, I do think that the skills that I gained from the program certainly gave me the skills and resources to effectively manage daily conflicts in the workspace, which I think is particularly important. In my current role, there is an added need for conflict resolution because of the topic that I work within, right? So diversity and inclusion. It is a particularly sensitive topic at times. It is one that I agree that we're probably in a time period where the topic of diversity is very personal for people. It can be very emotional for people. So having strong skills and just an understanding of that, and strong skills for managing conflicts, I think is particularly important in this field right now. And it's kind of I think diversity and inclusion is an interesting field because it's forever evolving. Again, having those conflict resolution skills are particularly important.
Thank you for sharing. Just to further off of that, when interacting with your colleagues in the workplace, or even just in general when speaking about conflict resolution, what are your interactions like? How do people react to what you do, and how do they see the value, I guess, is my question.
That's an interesting question. I think I'm not sure if my colleague seeing me as a conflict resolution practitioner, but my colleague described me as the good coordinator between like different parties, especially like because of my gender also, I think. But I see I can translate those different parties' special languages so that they can understand each other better. So I think like analyzing or maybe looking at the issue from a different point of view or one step away, that is a skill I got from the program, I think, and that is really useful, and my colleagues says that is really one of my special skill sets. Yeah.
So one thing I often get is this idea of being, I think I've heard referred to as, oh, Rebecca, you're so diplomatic. And I think that is, a direct articulation of, oh, you're using your conflict resolution skills. You are effectively managing this conflict. I think at times it might be dismissive maybe, but at the same time, the core of that is you are effectively managing different perspectives to an issue. So I would say that is certainly something that I hear often, and I don't look at it as a bad thing. And I think that, again, just highlights how I might approach conflicts in the workplace. I will also add that one thing that you touched on that I thought was particularly important, especially with, I would say, the work that I do, and probably just project management in general, is the ability to see an issue from someone else's perspective. I thought that was a very good point, because that perspective, or even just taking a moment to think about something through someone else's lens, I think, again, it helps with you coming up with a different solution, a more creative solution, and one that maybe meets the needs of multiple parties. So I think that is particularly important. So I want to emphasize that as well.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Mariko. You've both brought up some really great points about some of the transferable skills from the program to each of the work that you do. And I have to admit, just me speaking anecdotally, it's one of my favorite aspects of the program when I attended, and just my daily experience with working with the program and seeing the malleability of the skill sets that you gain throughout the program and are able to even build on the existing skills that you've may potentially already contain, and really be able to readily transfer those into a specific area professionally. That's not just so formal, right? As you see from both of your pathways, you're utilizing your skills, which may be very similar, as you noted, but in very different contexts. And the perception of those even have different, ways of being seen, but yet valuable nonetheless, because as you noted, Mariko, conflict is something that's ever present in a lot of different cultures, and being able to take those as an effective either negotiator or mediator, or even just a person, as you mentioned, Rebecca, that's self-aware, and you being able to notice different perspectives. I think that's really where a lot of the beauty lies in this type of work, and being in conflict resolution, is being able to take those skills and put them into a context professionally, and leverage that and find value in it for not just yourself, but for others. I guess with that being said, maybe you can both speak on something that was a favorite from the program on each of your experiences.
So I think I can say this because it's now, but looking back at the time when I was at Columbia, I think writing capstone thesis was really, I would say, important experience to me. It was not necessarily the best or funniest or the exciting process, but looking back at the experience on doing my own capstone by myself, that was a very big asset for me because I think, yeah, like finishing up those big projects by myself, that was a really big accomplishment to me. And I think one of my favorite courses was advanced negotiation and advanced mediation, because it was more focused on the role play, practice, and my cohort was like really diverse, I remember, and it was great experience having negotiation, mediation practice with those people who has like totally different backgrounds. It was like really rewarding experience to me. Yeah.
I would say so there were a lot of aspects of the program that I did really enjoy. I will say there's one that I particularly enjoyed that I was also quite surprised by, and that was the time spent on kind of gaining your own self-awareness. I know we've talked a little bit about this before, but there was, I think it was an interpersonal skills course. I can't remember the exact name of the course. But one of the exercises they had us do was to draw an ideal room. And this seems like a very simple exercise, but I drew a room with a single chair and a dog and a bookcase. And other people drew a long table with people in it, with people, space for others to be welcomed into their space. And I think that particular exercise, I think it highlights for me how much that self-awareness was so important, because I had no idea that I was drawing something that really reflected my being an introvert. And others, had a completely different perspective of their perspective on relaxing is to, have a 20-person dinner. So they drew a table, where 20 people can sit. So I just thought that was really an interesting way of getting at that self-awareness that I think is so important, throughout your life, but also in particular in the workspace, because you really do need to know yourself in order to effectively engage with others. So I would say that I think was one of the most interesting aspects of the program, and that exercise in particular stands out to me.
Thank you so much to you both for sharing those experiences. As we come to a little bit of a close here on our Q&A, on our section of the panel, I have one final question, and this is for those who might be interested in perhaps pursuing the program or perhaps the field. What advice do you have to any prospective students who might be interested in applying to the program?
I think before getting into the course, you should have the specific goal for yourself, what you want to accomplish, or what you want from that course. So I think having like specific goal or having specific milestone or something like that, that is really important. And it may not be the advice, but I think the conflict resolution and the negotiation skill is really important, as I mentioned several times, especially when the technology and AI, those advancement is really rapid. And most of the people work, not most of maybe, but a lot of people's work are getting done by AI or computer or some technology. But having those conflict resolution and negotiation skill is really valuable, and that can, highlight your professional skill. So I think I can really recommend this program. And if you decide to come to the program, I think having specific goal is really and can be helpful for you to run the most out of the program. Yeah.
So I would say that, and maybe my advice is more for those that have already made the decision to enter the program, but I would say it's really important to be intentional about what you've learned from each course. Because you'll take a lot of courses, and sometimes it's hard to remember specifically you learned XYZ in this course that's applicable to the workplace. So I would say, and I think I did this initially intentionally and then informally, but just keeping notes or bullet points, a few bullet points after each course on what you learned and how you think it will apply to the field that you want to go into. That way you're able to really be thoughtful about how you talk about the benefits of the program. So I would say that would be particularly helpful, just generally to tracking what your experience has been with the program, and then having that language when you talk about the benefits of the program and kind of what you're bringing to the table as you're either entering a field or kind of continuing work in a field. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, both of you, your views on that. So I do want to go ahead and move forward to the Q&A section. And before I do, I do want to note that if you do have any additional questions that we haven't been able to address, for those who are joining us right now live, or those who are viewing this at a later time, if you do have any specific questions regarding the program or the field, feel free to connect with me. I've listed my information here, and if Rebecca and Mariko also want to offer their insights further, I'd be happy to connect you with them later on after the session if they're available. I do also want to give this opportunity now to open some questions to our attendees. I do see that we have one question open, so I'm going to go ahead and address that now. So one attendee has asked us, do you find age to be a barrier to entering any of the professions associated with negotiation and conflict resolution? And they further ask, is it possible to enter the field in your golden years? Are there any fields more welcoming of older workers than others? Any insights?
Oh, you can go ahead. Oh, is it the question? Okay, so I think that is a very hard question to answer. But I think it depends on how you present your skill set, which you learned from the program. I think this negotiation and conflict resolution diploma and skill sets are really applicable to any kind of field. But especially for I'm working at the government for the almost whole entire my professional career. And I think public policy area, we need those skill sets, of course, but also the private sector also. So I do not see the specific field which is as a friendly area of the negotiation and conflict resolution. But I think it's really important to tailor your skill set towards your, the professional goal. Am I making sense? Yeah.
So I would just add that no, I've not seen any particular barriers as it relates to kind of various generations working in this space. And so to answer your question, not that I am aware of, I will add that I think there were a number of professors or individuals that taught us that maybe even, were they lawyers previously and then decided to hone their negotiation and conflict resolution skills after having practiced for years. So I think people entered this field at various different stages of their careers. And I think that was evident by some of the stories that we heard from those that were practicing in the negotiation and conflict resolution space.
Yes, thank you so much for responding, Mariko and Rebecca. And if I might add, just based on my experiences in the program, but also working the program and seeing some of the cohorts that are coming into the program, we do see that, there is a diversity in the amount of years of experience and interests and where you are at professionally. And it's not atypical for somebody to come into the program that has many years of experience, that is a career, as we call it, a career pivoter, that is entering into the field and kind of looking for more of a specific interest and a specific skill set to hone in on and take back into their careers. So, you can really utilize the teachings from this program at any stage of your life. And as long as you're able to really find where the value is for you and what that looks like in your professional interest, the program has a lot of value for you in anywhere that you're at. I'm even seeing just one more question. With a lot of the topics being said, is there a specific formal path with conflict resolution, or is it more of a open-ended type of career path?
I think it's totally open-ended career path you can get after this program. Yeah, it depends on like how you want to utilize your skill, which you got from the program. Yeah, I'm not sure about like all of my cohort where they went after the program, but I think it's really diverse, I guess. Yeah, and it totally depends on how you express or how you tailor your skill sets towards your career. So it's really open-ended path.
I agree. It is very open-ended, and I would say these skills are transferable across fields and industries.
Great, thank you for responding. That is all of the questions that we have in so far. We still have some time left if any of our attendees have any additional questions. Please feel free to sound off within the next few minutes. If not, I do want to close out the session and provide some very sincere thanks to both Rebecca and Mariko for joining us today. And I also want to give sincere thanks to Kirsten for helping coordinate and establishing this session for us to provide to you today. And thank you to our attendees for joining. And as I mentioned, if you do have any interest in exploring some more questions that you might have, feel free to reach out to myself, to me, or the program, and I'd be happy to discuss further with you. We haven't got any other questions in as of yet, so with that being said, thank you again to Rebecca and Mariko and Kirsten, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.